Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I read in February, and there was so many good ones. I'm really excited to share all these with you. So if you enjoy this type of content and other homeschool content, please remember to subscribe and let's talk about some books. Okay, so the first book I wanted to share with you is The 5-Second Rule, which was recommended by one of you, and I actually really loved it. I'm not exactly sure what category I would put it in. It's probably under productivity and maybe self-help a little bit. I might kind of put it in the middle. I'm not really sure, but I love the way she approaches like productivity and self-help. And it focuses very much on like the inner self, and that you have the power to change and to do things within you. And I think that was just a beautiful part of this book. So I think it starts out right from the beginning telling you that's what she's gonna focus on. It says, if you're searching for that one person who will change your life, look in the mirror. And I just think that is so beautiful. Sometimes it can be daunting, but knowing that we have the power to change and create our life into what we want it to be, or, you know, it doesn't always end up exactly how we want it, but we have that power and we have that strength to push forward. And so she talks about the 5-second rule. And basically just briefly telling you about what it even means. So she was 40 years old, she was married, she had some kids, and everything was kind of falling apart. And she was a little bit of an alcoholic and would just go to bed, wasn't getting up in the morning on time, always rushing her kids out the door, like they were late for school, they missed the bus, all these things. Her relationship with her husband was going downhill. All these things were happening, and you know, it's always, okay, I'll do something about it tomorrow, or if I just do this, or if I just do this. And we all have those moments, right? If I would just get up off my rear and go do something, everything would change. But then we don't always do that, right? It's overwhelming. It takes a lot of work. It requires us to be uncomfortable. You know, it's a lot easier just to sit on the couch and do nothing. And it was a lot easier for her just lay in her bed and hit her snooze button on her alarm than it was to get out and face the reality, right? It was a coping mechanism for stress in her life to just kind of ignore it. So she was watching like a rocket launch, and you know, they count backwards and then blast off, and it was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna do that in the morning. I'm gonna count backwards and blast off. When I hit that point, I'm gonna get out of bed. And that's what she did, and it totally changed her life. And obviously she wrote books about it, she speaks everywhere, like it just changed everything because she got up and started moving, you know, and sometimes that's the hardest part. And so she talks about how this rule can be applied in so many different aspects of our life. She has tons of like social media posts in here from people telling her how it's worked in their lives, and so that makes it a little easier to read too. It's a quicker read because of those. And I just really love that idea of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like get up and move. And she said you can't count forward, you have to count backward, because if you count forward, you can just keep counting and you never get up. Obviously, you could go into negative numbers if you counted backwards, but who's gonna do that, you know? And so you get up and you get moving. She talks about it in relation to like workplace. If you have an idea but have been hesitant to share it, just count like this. Counting gets your mind out of like all the emotional part of thinking of, oh, I can't do this, or this could go wrong, or all the things that cross our minds that keep us from doing things. When we count, it snaps our brain for a second, and then it allows us to move. You know, she didn't know until after she started doing this that there was like scientific research behind it, and behind not pushing the snooze button. Because then you fall back into a deeper sleep and you're actually more tired when you do get up than you would be if you just got up when your alarm went off instead of pushing the snooze button 50 million times. And so she found all this research, you know, that kind of backed up this idea that had already started changing her life. And I love the workplace example that she does give, just because it's this lady that shares an idea that she's had. And she hesitated in one meeting, and then the next time she was like, I'm gonna do it. And she does, and nothing revolutionary happens, okay? Like, they're like, great, you know, they weren't mean, and they were accepting of her idea, but it's not like all of a sudden she changed the world. But Mel Robbins talks about how it changed this girl inside, because she had finally spoken up. She had finally realized she had that confidence, that ability to be this person she didn't know she could be. And I just thought that was so beautiful, and I really loved that about this book. There's so many good things, you know, even like trying to meet someone new. You see maybe a girl or a guy you're interested in, and you're like get nervous and you talk yourself out of it, or maybe they're dating someone already, or all these things, and just count down and go. And go introduce yourself. You just never know the opportunities you can create for yourself if you don't even try. So there's so many beautiful things about this book. So I would just recommend going to read it, and I'm excited to go back through it. And I think about this idea all the time, even when I'm trying to get out of bed in the morning, like, okay, just count down, get up and get moving and make something of your day. Okay, the next book I wanted to mention is The Sea of Tranquility. This is such an interesting book. I had never read anything by this author before. I've heard it, like my husband has someone that he knows that loves this author and like swears by her. So if you've read any of her other books, let me know what you think about them, because maybe I'll try some of the other ones too. It is complex and not complex. It's so hard to explain without like giving the story away, but it's covering several different time periods. So it is like, it's a time traveling book, and it was written, I think like 2021, was that when it was written? I'd have to look at the copyright. So there's a lot of inspiration from the pandemic. Like I heard that she was already writing stuff about pandemics before the COVID happened. But even after that, like there's a lot of things in here that's talking about pandemics throughout time. And so that was interesting, like an interesting point in kind of seeing some of the parallels, and especially now that we're on the other side of it, seeing all the things that were happening and the different parallels with that. But it talks about some different people during these time periods and these connections that they have. And it's very fascinating. And I'll tell you what, like, if you don't know, The Sea of Tranquility, I figured this out, and then the like next chapter, it brought this up anyway, is on the moon. I remember this just from school, like The Sea of Tranquility is something from on the moon. And so it will be talking about some settlements on the moon and different things like that. But just go on Amazon and read the description. It's still extremely vague, but it is a complex book. We read it for book club. If I didn't say that already, I might have said that. And so as we discussed it, it was one of those things where it was interesting, we liked it, but there was also like a wanting more or needing more closure or things like that. So if you've read it, or if you do go and read it, let me know your thoughts about it, because again, I don't want to give too much away or tell you the whole story or anything like that. But it's just a fascinating book, and I'd be interested about your thoughts on it. Okay, the next book I wanted to mention is The Downstairs Girl, which I again think it was a recommendation from you guys. You guys give really great recommendations. This was probably my favorite book I read this month. You know, I had other books that I liked for other reasons, but this one was really good, and it's a young adult fiction, so it has bigger words, which is really nice. But I really enjoyed this book. It gave me a different perspective on some of early American history a little bit. I can't remember exactly what time period this is covering. So it's still, there's still a lot of racism, but when, you know, there was still a lot of segregation going on, like on buses and different things like that. And so this is a Chinese girl, and her and a caretaker, I guess, of hers that is also Chinese are squatting in a basement of some white people. And it goes through her story. She's a maid for this really rich girl that's very snotty and snobby and stuff. And so that's what she is doing. But then the house they live below, is someone that writes for the newspaper. And they're trying to make their newspaper more popular. So they thought if they had like a woman's column or something like that, that it would make it more popular. So she anonymously, why can't I say that word? Anonymously, there we go. That was really hard. That was a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. Writes to the paper under like Dear Miss Sweetie is the name she picks, and it becomes super popular. Very, very popular, and everyone is loving this little column. Obviously they don't know it's her, and she would be in big trouble if they knew it was her because she is Asian. And there was still so much, I think the part of this book that was eye-opening and good for me was just, I always just think of Blacks really struggling and having a hard time. I don't think of as much of like Asians that came to America really having a hard time and not being able to work in a lot of normal jobs. Like she got fired from her first job just because people were uncomfortable with her being there, even though she was making hats and she was very, very, very good at it, but people just weren't comfortable with her being there. So the owner had to fire her, and just things like that, where it was just uncomfortable. It was a struggle for them to do anything. And then obviously interracial like marriages, relationships were illegal and all these things going on. So it was a very interesting book. It was an easy read. I liked, it kept me intrigued the whole time. And there's a few like little mystery, not scary mystery, but just mystery points going on. So I really enjoyed reading this book. The last book I wanted to mention is 4,000 Weeks, and it says Time Management for Mortals. And this is our book club book, and we're meeting in a few days to discuss it. So I'd probably understand or have more thoughts about it after that, but I still wanted to share it with you today. And I really like this book. It's so hard for me to know exactly how to explain it. It's almost a philosophical book, or like more theory based. So 4,000 weeks refers to like the average person's lifespan in weeks. Like that's how much time you have. And it's going to go into time and talk a lot about what time is, what it means. And I come away, there's some questions at the end of the book that kind of tie up, I guess, with what you should get from the book. But as you read the book, at least for me, I'm like, okay, so time exists and it doesn't exist. It's very, like I said, it's very philosophical almost. And okay, this is what you should do with your time, or this isn't, you should be productive, but maybe you shouldn't be productive. It's kind of back and forth and just very thought-provoking, I guess, in that way. And so I thought it was a very interesting book. Again, this one and the 5-second rule fall under a lot of these productivity categories, but I felt they were unique books compared to some of the other ones that I have read. They just had different ideas and principles that I don't usually see people talk about. And so that's why I really liked them. So like I said, this one goes through a lot of talking about time, what we should be doing with our time, how we spend our time, and all these different things like what is time. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is it talks about leisure and the importance of having time for leisure, and even how the Sabbath day or Sunday has kind of disappeared. It's just become another work day, and how we're not good at just taking a break. We're not good at it. And that was, I think, this quote that I have my finger in. It says, in such an era, it's virtually guaranteed that truly stopping to rest, as opposed to training for a 10K or heading off on a meditation retreat with the goal of attaining spiritual enlightenment, is initially going to provoke some serious feelings of discomfort rather than of delight. That discomfort isn't a sign that you shouldn't be doing that, though. It's a sign that you definitely should. Okay, so it says, resting to stop. So I think so many things nowadays, in order to rest or to get a break, we go somewhere, like it said, or we train for a 10K, we go on a vacation. That's where we're going to get this rest. Where in reality, it's really found within us, but it's also just found at home. It's found in these spaces, and we need to create that. And I loved one of the examples. I'm not going to get it perfect. I'm filming this a lot later than normal, so some of these books, it's been a little bit since I actually read them. But it talks about leisure and hobbies, having hobbies and how it can be a good thing. There are bad ways to have hobbies, if they become so over-focused and take up other time, then obviously you might need to get rid of some of them, and that can be a problem. but he talks about a singer. I can't remember who it is. It's a famous singer. And how this particular singer, besides just singing, they love, I think, to build model trains is what it was. And it's something they just love to do. And it's not something, looking at the singer, he's like in his black leather and all that kind of stuff, that you'd be like, oh, this person loves to build these model trains, but they do. And he compared it to someone that I think is either a YouTuber or just some social media influencer who loves risk taking. That's kind of their focus of what they do, is more like extreme sport type things and doing things to an extreme. So they pick a hobby that falls into that category. And you look at that and you're like, do they really like this hobby? Is it true leisure for them? Or is it just something that they do because it increases subscribers, it increases views, all this kind of stuff. So the comparison of doing this hobby, like building model trains, because like you can tell, it's something they must love to do because it makes no sense with their career choice, versus someone that is only picking things that further their career choice. And not saying you can't do things that fall in that, because you might already love to do them, which is why you pick them. But trying things you just might not even be good at all, and seeing if you like that. Take that chance. And so I thought that was interesting. Another point he talks about is so many things we do nowadays, we only do them because they have some sort of like reward, like he has their special names for them. I can't remember what they are. I don't even know if I can pronounce them. But there's some sort of reward at the end. There's a finishing point. You can clearly see it. It's clearly written. But then there's other things that we do, or that we should be doing more of, that we just do to do. Okay, there's not this specific ending point. And he relates it to hiking. Like sometimes I go hiking because I just like to go hiking. I like to just be in the mountains. And yeah, sometimes you're gonna get to a end of a trail, but you're gonna turn around. There's nothing like this specific reward involved with that besides, the effort you put in and things like that. And so it's a little bit different, but we're always looking for those activities or those, jobs or anything that's like, this is going to be what I get out of it, instead of just allowing it to be and just go do it just to do it. And I think that's important. Again, just leisure was one of the chapters that really stuck out to me, just the importance of allowing ourselves to rest in this very busy, busy world. And going on vacation isn't providing that rest most of the time. It's providing more chaos. And so there's tons more things in here. And like I said, I feel like the thing that was the most helpful, that I was kind of hoping for the whole time, since it was kind of all over the place, like, yes, be productive, but no, it's really making you think about how you think about time. And so at the very end, there are some tools. There's like 10 tools for embracing the ideas that he shares. And then he also has some questions that you can think about as well. There's 5 questions. And I feel like going through that was helpful after reading the book, right? After understanding what he's talking about. And then it just goes through these different points, like consolidate your carrying, seek out novelty in the mundane, okay? Embrace boring and single purpose technology. And I like these points because they were super unique. Again, not stuff you usually hear about from a lot of other books and a lot of other people, especially with productivity, like just kind of let things go, like push that aside. Not a way of like getting everything done, but rather focusing on what you want your life to be, what you want your purpose to be, instead of saying yes to everything, running around like a crazy chicken and all these things trying to get everything done. And so I really appreciated that. But I'm excited to talk about it with my book club book and to see how that goes. Okay, so those were the books that I read in February. I love them all. I learned so much from them all. It was a really good month for reading. So hopefully this month will be similar. We'll see how it goes. Since it's the middle of the month and I really gotta like crank it up if I'm gonna get through some books this month. It's been busy so far. And so if you like these types of videos, remember to give it a thumbs up and put your book recommendations down below because I love them so much, as you can see. And I will talk to you later.